It's looking good, Andy.
Okay.
Look at this technology.
Marvelous.
So shall I leave it in your hands now, and I'll just help Rachel get logged in? Yeah.
Marvelous.
Okay.
Thanks, Kate. Good morning, everybody, and it's wonderful to be with you. Shame can't see you. We know there are quite a few people out there, so welcome to our presentation around shared lives. First of all, we can see. Just get that going. Yep, I'm Andy. I'm a shared lives carer and a shared lives carer champion. We're going to start just by briefly giving you an overview of shared lives. Apologies to those people that know about shared lives, but still a little bit about how it works. And then I'm going to hand on to James, who really does know how it works. Shared lives care. Shared lives is a model of care that in which the people that are being supported are part of a family. They're part of a family in that many of them will live in the family home. Some, like James, will live in their own houses. So they can experience family life and all the things that we all take for granted, going out, having fun, and having what I call a real life. I became a shared lives carer 10 years ago. Before that, I had a pretty successful time in teaching, a bit of a mental health breakdown, and of course, what would you do but turn to shared lives? Before that, I knew nothing about social care, but had a great mentor, a shared lives carer who I worked with, talked me through it, and she was absolutely wonderful. So you can imagine that I am a great believer in a mentoring scheme. A shared lives carer doesn't have to have a great deal of qualifications. There are no exams to pass. They need to be really on side with how shared lives works. And at first, it's not that easy. So a shared lives carer will be approved by a panel of people in their area. And then after a series of meetings, and then will be matched up with her person or people. Shared lives carers can have up to 3 people in their home that they're going to share their life with. This process takes some time, and some people argue it's too long, but it has a length because we need to get it right for both sets of people, because this is a 2-way process. It's no way it's a 1-way process. Shared lives carers are paid. They are self-employed, which sometimes can cause a problem. It's difficult. You have to look after your own tax affairs, things like that, but they are self-employed. Shared lives at the moment in the UK, there are about 6,000 shared lives carers. There are 150 schemes. Now, a scheme is the group of people that run the shared lives system in that area. So it could be run by a council, it could be run more independently. There will be a manager, there will be scheme workers, or I really don't like the term placement officers, that will support shared lives carers in their role. So it's regulated by CQC. Currently, shared lives has a 95% good or outstanding rating with CQC. It's sometimes a little known form of social care, and it'd be really interesting just to find out how many of you guys out there really know, if you know much about it, have even heard of it. Very often when I speak, I normally get a blank look when I mention shared lives. It says here I'm also a shared lives champion. So I work with Shared Lives Plus. Just to confuse everybody, Shared Lives Plus is the umbrella organisation for shared lives that supports both carers and schemes. So Shared Lives Plus will issue guidance, lobbies Parliament, works at a national and local level to support everything that goes on in shared lives. It's a membership organisation, and we support our members. So I'm and 3 other of us are Shared Lives champions, and we support and advocate for carers. We run a call system, we get in touch with people, they get in touch with us, and we recommend, support them in everything that they do if they need it. We have a legal system that helps them too. Most recently, we've set up a couple of carers on Zoom, not surprisingly, and have managed to connect a lot of carers together from all around the country. So this afternoon, I'll be talking to people from Manchester, from Durham, from Sussex, who have become a group on Zoom, and we can help them that way. The very best way to find out about shared lives is to talk to people that are living in shared lives. And James is the person that I share my life with, my family with, and he's about to tell you a bit about his life. This is an example. There are thousands of fantastic shared lives carers out there. We are just an example. We're not doing anything. It's not rocket science. It's not difficult in terms of thought processes. It is getting along and living a real life. So here's James.
My name is James. I have been living in a shared lives arrangement with Andy and his family for nearly 10 years. Before that, I lived in a specialist residential centre for epilepsy at Chalfont in Buckinghamshire for over 20 years. I didn't get the support when I needed it. It was boring. I was always doing the same thing, walking around the centre. I spent a lot of time in my bedroom. I moved to Ware in Hertfordshire in December 2010. I didn't think I would ever get my own house. These are photos of me doing the things I like doing. Gardening, karate, cooking and decorating my own house for Christmas. I voted for the first time in my life in 2015. Before that, people had told me not to bother as I would not understand. Here is a short film made by the ITV about me and Andy.
James, I don't think there's any sound on this, should there be? Not sure. It's still can't hear the sound. Would it be okay if I take the screen share and I'll play it from my end? Andy, would that be okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to take the screen. And is the link embedded in the presentation? It's this one, isn't it? Okay, do you have the YouTube address that you can pop in the chat box now? Sorry, guys, we've hit our first technical challenge of the week.
Andy, what you do is if you go on the internet, highlight it, copy it and paste into the chat.
We will get there, guys, and it'll be worth it. The video is excellent. There's some really unusual settings on Zoom for the sound, so it's not you guys, it's quite common.
Okay, we'll go back to.
There's some dogs that want to get in on the talk.
Yeah, just our dog. No.
Well, do you know what the name of the video is, Andy? Got it.
They are.
Okay, I've got it. Thanks, Peter. Don't know you've managed that one, but we should be good to go. Okay.
Are first and foremost friends. A match made by the Shared Lives scheme, which pairs adults who need care with carers who are looking to help. James had been living in residential care for 2 decades, but 8 years ago, Andy started giving him support to live life on his own terms.
I was dreaming of getting my own house.
And now you've got one.
And now I've got one.
We made it work, and James lives very, very close to our house. He uses our house a lot. It's part of the family. He likes to be able to do things himself, whereas before he had lots of things done for him. His life had been spent people doing things for him, and now he can do most of the things for himself.
And things for other people too. James wanted to give something back to his new community in Ware in Hertfordshire, so he and Andy set up Local Social.
To help people that need to get out a lot more.
A free cafe in the local arts centre brings people together.
He is so professional in the way he serves everybody, always with a smile. Everybody says what a lovely smile he's got. And you can have a huge queue of people sort of waiting for their drinks, and James will just make his way through that calmly. So I love it.
He's become an ambassador for the Shared Lives scheme, which needs more carers to come forward.
The majority of our people that use our service at the moment do have some form of learning difficulty. But social challenges, as they are at the moment, mean that we have a lot of people with mental health conditions, with dementia and physical disabilities, all needing some form of care and support. So as those challenges are coming forward, we're looking to diversify our service as well to meet that need.
Since James and Andy were matched, life has changed for both of them.
Seeing James flourish as an individual, he's more confident, he's more independent. James has really, really transformed my life, and there's no doubt about that. I owe him a lot.
Shared lives, shared adventures. James and Andy now travel the country, sharing their story with others. Graham Stothard, ITV News.
No.
Okay, great. So you can take the screen back now.
Okay.
Oh, and Patsy says her dog is barking. Back to your dogs. So we've got dogs and communication. Yeah, it was worth waiting for, wasn't it, Tessa? How beautiful news piece.
Take possibly more seriously than I take anything else, including any other aspect of our.
Right.
You able to take the screen now, Andy?
I'm trying to. I'm trying.
You're doing great.
I'm trying to exit this.
Maybe just as you're doing that, we can get the chat box going then. So perhaps people can, so Rachel's popped in some information there around their in-house shared life service. Yeah, but you know, share your experience of shared lives in this chat box. And if you've got questions for James or Andy, pop them in too, and we can ask them. Do you want me to put the presentation up my end and you just say next slide? Would that be easier?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's do that then. Can you see the ambassador slide?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, over to you guys then.
Right, James.
I enjoy living in my own house, making friends and helping people. I have recently got a greenhouse in my garden and I have grown lots of tomatoes and sold them at the country market in Ware. I like the freedom I have now got, but there is always help if I need it, day and night. My health is a lot better now. I can get up in the morning and catch trains with Andy to tell people about my life. I have a lot more friends now, do things that I enjoy and can help other people. All this makes me happy. Thank you for listening.
YouTube.
Andy, do you want me to go back to the presentation?
Yes.
I think I've got Rachel's as well.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, no, it's your talk. Okay. Did you want me to go through? I think we were there.
And we were there. We were keep going.
Forward.
That's it. That's the end. That's fine. We're done.
Marvelous. Okay, so we were going to pause here for questions.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So pop questions and comments in the chat box. Lots of people are saying thank you and fantastic, James. Thank you for sharing. One of the questions is about for James and you, Andy. What advice would you give to somebody considering shared lives?
Yeah, the advice I'd give is to try and find out, contact the scheme.
Yeah.
If there's a local scheme in your area, and talk to them first, and then if you can find people that are shared lives carers, talk to them. Find out as much as you can about how it runs, how it works, and work with the scheme and shared lives carers in the scheme to get introductions, so you get a real feel for it. That would be my first few steps. It's a big step. It's a big step for people, and it takes time to really get hold of what shared lives is all about.
Thank you. James, did you want to add anything?
No.
Okay, thank you. Rachel, did you have any advice if someone was considering it?
Yeah, for the carers, it would be just to think about who you would like to live with. Because, for example, when I had a shared life carer, the carer said to me that he would like to meet me first before he decided to say yes. So the carer, so if you're going to consider being a carer, for example, just have a think who you would want. Like, would you want to have a male or a female, for example? Or if it's somebody that's challenging or with learning disability or whatever, that leaves the schemes, I've got an idea who you like to have, then the match-up process works, and you can meet that person then.
Yeah. And did you have much control over
Living with a carer, no, I thought this had to be a place I had to live. But then after that carer, the other carers I did have control. I wanted somebody that understood autism, and the other 5 carers understood it more, and that helped me more with the daycare support and helped me become more independent and get away from fizzy pops.
Got you. And then another question about, did you have any concerns about being involved? This is for everyone.
For me, they weren't concerns. They were. I was diving into something that I'd never known before, and actually thought that I was not a good ideal shared lives care at all, and knew nothing about what was going on. Fortunately, as I said in the presentation, I was one of our actually family friends was a fantastic shared lives carer. And she supported me right the way through the first sort of year and a half.
Yeah.
So, and that was really, really useful. But getting up in the middle of the night and being with James, having an epileptic seizure was itself a bit concerning and frightening at the start. But I was supported through that, which was brilliant, and that's what you need. It is a change, a huge change. Weekends don't exist anymore. There's no 9 to 5, but that makes it fabulously interesting. Wouldn't change it for the world.
Thank you. James or Rachel, do you have anything to add about any of your concerns?
It took me a while to get used to doing the talks about my life.
Were you frightened about shared lives?
And I was frightened, yeah.
Yeah.
Is this about living with a carer, or is this about?
Yeah, I think the whole idea is shared lives,
Yeah.
or about moving in with somebody. Yeah.
To be honest, not really, because the good thing about shared lives is it's a match-up process where when I was fostered, I had no idea who those 2 foster families were. Where with this carer, it was much better because I met it the first time and it was easier for the 2 of us. So it worked out well for both, not one or the other.
Got you. And that leads us lovely into the next question, Rachel. So thank you for that link, which is, can you tell us about how the matching process works?
Who wants to go? Do you want to go first, or do you just want to go first?
Yeah.
All right. The match-up process works where for example, the carers can talk to the schemes, like I said before, about if they want a male or female, and just who they like to have, and how it works for us as clients, because I don't like using the word service users. As it works for us clients is that speak to us, depending on the circumstances, just speak to us and then see who we would like to have. And then if it works, then what happens there is you both meet up, but the carers have some home visits just to make sure they have like reviews or getting interviewed, because I've interviewed some carers in the past. And then it's just you meet up, and then if you're both happy with it, for example, when I met a carer called Savannah that I got on with so well, we both met up, and then because we're into Disney and everything, she became my carer as well. So it works out really well where the carers can have their say who they like to have, which Andy will be able to touch on, and us clients can have our say if we like to have somebody, and then we both meet up, and then it works out better if you both agree, rather than having it like in support agencies where you just go wherever you go. So with shared lives, it's better that you know who you're going to be working with.
Got you. Anything from you, James, or Andy?
Yeah, I mean, I will always remember the first time I met James, because we'd done quite a bit of preparation with the scheme and with the social work team, and we went up to Chalfont, and there was James at the gate of his house. He lived in a house that was the furthest away from the centre, on his own. His mates had all moved out, hadn't they, James?
Yeah.
And there was James in his grey slacks and a lovely blazer, looking very smart. He obviously thought it was important. And for us, we went through a process of meeting James, going up there. I went up there several times, getting to know each other, what he liked, what he didn't like, and after a couple of months, it was. I actually on the December the 15th, 2010, I drove him away from Chalfont with a load of his stuff. My car was jam-packed full. Nobody came to say goodbye to him. He'd only been there 21 years, and off we went. At that point, I was frightened. My scheme manager said to me, "Don't worry, Andy, you'll be fine. If there's a problem, just call an ambulance."
Oh my gosh!
So it didn't happen. It was. Oh. But that was my experience of matching, and then we got to know each other with the help of other shared lives carers, the fantastic shared lives carer that I spoke about before. Yeah.
This is great. You two look thick as thieves as well. You and James. And there was another question for Andy, actually, around you mentioned what you got from the scheme. Can you tell us a bit more around that? What kind of the benefits for you as a carer?
From the scheme? The scheme give you the support that you need. Fortunately, they do. The idea is they do the paperwork, and you do most of the caring. If there's a situation that is difficult or you're not sure about, then they're there to support you through it. That's how the scheme works, and that's much needed. And most schemes are fantastic, and support their carers really well. And you can imagine in the COVID situation, it's been a really difficult time for everybody, in shared lives especially, because shared lives is never meant to be a 24/7 idea. And of course, as COVID, it has been for many when respite services closed down, day services are closed down. It's been really difficult. So that's when you want your scheme to be supporting you, advocating for you, fighting your corner. I did notice that it's in England, Wales, Scotland. Yeah, it's right across the UK. Somebody asked that question.
Thank you. And there's a national shared lives organisation, isn't there?
And national, if you talk about Shared Lives Plus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to give you a plug.
Yeah, we are we're the national organisation for shared lives, the Shared Lives Plus, the membership organisation, as I said, that supports carers and schemes, and lobbies and works with national, with government, with NHS, with various national bodies to promote shared lives.
Yeah. What I might do then is I'll pop the website into the chat box. But Rachel, are you ready to take over? So if you want to tell me when you'd like the next slide.
Yeah, so I might start with this one.
Is that okay? So maybe if you want to introduce yourself and then.
So hello everyone, my name's Rachel Turner. I'm a Shared Lives Plus ambassador. I work with Pathway Association and do a lot of work around autism. And I'm here to also just talk to you about the advocacy. So the one thing that I'm going to talk about through these pictures, that a lot of this inspires me to not give up, to be honest. Because, for example, in advocacy work, there's a lot of things that people need help with. For example, I need help with social care to try and get help with my support hours. I had 18 hours up to June last year, and then what happened was they knocked it to 10, and from then on to about March or April, I've had a lot of challenges to try and get 4 hours back. So what helps with advocacy not to give up is, for example, Aladdin inspires me. He doesn't give up for lots of advice. He's like an advocacy for me that gets lots of advice and gets lots of good ideas and never gives up. So he's somebody that does help me not to give up. So I had to speak to create support and advocacy and that, get a lot of advice and learn about rights and Care Act, and that helped me to go forward. Next slide, please. What Ariel does for me is, as well as getting advice, she doesn't give up no matter what anybody says, to be honest. And that's something that a lot of people need to learn to do, is not to stick too much to what people say, because not everybody, a lot of professionals are right in what they say, to be honest. So what I've had to do is get a lot of advice, and even though I got told by a social worker, for example, you've got 10 hours, that, to be honest, I didn't really stick with, and I took it further with the Human Rights and Care Act, which the social worker and the manager went quiet about. So that's like what Ariel does. He knows what a lot of people, including her father and sisters, say, and just keeps going and then gets her dreams. So it's important that you stick to the right people, the people you trust, and then with that, you can make things much better in your life. Next slide, please. Pocahontas is exactly the same. Gets advice from Grandmother, it's hard word to say, and what she does is exactly the same thing as Aladdin Ariel, which is not to give up, get advice, and try and get her life into the way she needs it. And that's exactly what I did with my extra hours, was to try and get the extra hours, and it made a massive difference to me. So it's important with that you get advice and then you just challenge it, and doesn't matter what people tell you that are close to you, just keep going until you get exactly what you need, and then things will make a big difference to you. Next slide, please. The advice I've given to a lot of people with autism, because I've helped people with peer support and everything, and help them to get help from advocacy, is that a lot of them do like things like Harry Potter and Godzilla's, but I always tell them to watch Harry Potter and Chamber of Secrets, because one thing that he does do is not to give up, but the one thing that we don't have in life is a magic wand. So that's the only thing that he does have that we don't have, which is not to give up and to keep going to the end. So, but apart from that bit, he never gives up and he goes to the end. So in terms of the advocacy stuff and social care, it's important not to give up. Think about what one you would have, you could change it. And with that, try and see what you can do that's in your hands, or the people close to you or people supporting you can do. And then it'll make a huge difference then. And next slide, please. Right, sorry that these next two
Rachel, I thought we said this wasn't allowed.
It's quite odd there's no words there. Yeah, because I know and we put the words on, but no, we must have showed them. It's meant to have winners on it. Sorry that if anybody's not a United fan, but I'm afraid I am. Oh, quite, I love this, Rachel. Thank you, Nicola. But I'll carry on. The one thing that United always do that helps me is not to give up. So in 2003 season, they were struggling, and when they catched up to Arsenal from 9 points to 3, it was 7, and then went to 3 points and to 5. Eventually, they did win it, the title. It was such a struggle, a mountain to climb, but in the end, they got to it, and that's exactly what I've had to do so many times with getting the right support in shared lives. And even when I've struggled since not using shared lives, I've had to keep fighting to try and get the right support and get the right information from advocacies. I've learned that there's legal advocacies, which I never knew about. And that's something I've really learned that has helped me massively, and learned about the Care Act and my rights. And because I've done all that, it's kind of made it difficult for social services to just keep saying you've got 10 hours and I've got my hours back. And even though there are bumps in the way, like I said, you got 10 hours, that was frustrating. But instead of giving up, I try and keep going again like it's another one. And to be honest, it's important to understand in life, you are going to have bumps on the way. But if you give up, you get nowhere, just like teams get relegated. But if you keep going, try and bounce back, you will get somewhere. And that season of 2003 is an example. But also on this picture, you can see they won the FA Cup. They won 2-1 in the FA Cup quarter-final replay, in the semi-final, and extra time in the final. They were huge, tough games, and that tells you that shows if you don't give up and you keep going, no matter how hard it is, you will achieve something special. And I've achieved special things so many times by not giving up. For example, as well as getting my hours back, I had to try and move somewhere safe. I had youths hanging about. The police did nothing, and it was difficult with Twin Valley saying it was down to the police saying it's down to Twin Valley. I was suffering that bad. In the end, I got help from Halo Housing. And Halo Housing, once I met them and I learned about them, that they help people, disabled people, and autism, it made a huge, massive difference to me to look for a home and just try and cope with what I had to cope with to the end. And then finally, when it happened to move and get the right place, which I'm in now at the minute, it made a huge difference to my life. Next slide, please. So this one you might be happy with, ladies and gentlemen.
Definitely, this is what champions look like.
I thought next time I'll be doing an advocacy, I'll be playing a video of Liverpool that I found, which I'll be talking about right now. In 2019, it was a phenomenal year. I know they won the champions this year, but to be honest, they only lost one game that year in 2019 from January to December as a whole calendar year. And one thing that they did, a few things they have done which helped me to keep fighting for other people as well as myself for our rights, our future, our lives, is, for example, after losing to Man City was the only game they lost, and they went on a run of 17 games in a lead, which was a good record for them before they equaled Man City's record of 18 games. Lost 3-0 to Barcelona. What a terrible night that was. But the following week, what a night to win 4-0 and to go on to win Champions League, as it shows here. That shows you again, do not give up. It looks difficult and hard, as it is to get your rights and your support done through social care and moving to the right place of support and getting support for learning disability and autism, because not a lot of support there for autism especially. But if you keep going and try and get the right help and support, it makes a huge difference. And that's what happened with Liverpool. Without two top players, they beat Barcelona 4-0 and went on to be champions. And even though it's difficult, even though it's them, I knew they would go to do it, just like Jurgen Klopp said. So then after failing to win the title, what a wonder went on the following year. They didn't just give up, they kept going. And apart from drawing with United, they won all the other games from August to February that season. And that shows you a few records that they've broken, like great start to the season. And that is another example. I've suffered so much, right? But getting help from health trainers, the ladies at the gym, and sewing and creative support, and Indigo, which helps with disabled and autism, as well as Shared Lives Plus and the carers that have not been my carers. It makes a huge difference. So it's like kind of that great network. I'm fortunate to have had that, but to be honest, the people who have not had it, I know how they feel. Because when I was in Support 11, the only people that supported me was Shared Lives carers. And to be honest, I've learned a lot from them to keep going, because they love Disney films like Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and a few other films. For example, one of the carers kept using my Beauty and the Beast. I had to hide it from other people because she loved it. And she always told me to not forget what Aladdin and Belle and Ariel always did as Rose Pocahontas. They keep going to get their dreams come true. And that's exactly what I've been inspired to do, to keep going. And it's important that you're to remember the people that you're working with or have a meeting with or whatever, is make sure that they know what they're entitled to. So, for example, they've got a right to have the hours alongside entitled to it, and to get help through the benefit system and the support, make sure they have a good life, somewhere to live with in a peaceful life. There's so much that needs to be looked into, because, for example, the one thing that I want to stop, that I hope you're all going to try and do a favour after today from me, Andy and James, is tell people what there is of advocacy, shared lives, amongst other things. Because it's the right saying, we want people to get involved, but how can we get involved if we don't know? For example, a shared lives scheme told me there was a partnership board meeting I'd never heard of before. Once I went to it, I got help and some extra support. I learned what there was around the community. So what we need to work on is make sure that people know what there is out there to get help. And then once they know, then we can get confident, as I've been doing with fighting for my rights. Because the more the health trainer, once she introduced me to creative support, I learned from them that I could get help with my support. Then I had to get help from advocacy amongst other people. So it's important there to know that that there is support out there for people, and not to give up, as I said, with the Disney and football and Black Harry Potter. It's important you watch all these things, look at records amongst things, dreams come true. That goes well with fighting for your rights and to keep going right to the last minute. And if you do that, I tell you, honestly, it makes a huge difference. Like now, I've got a safe place to live, I've got the right support, and I'm looking to move to Leeds in the future, with which Hell House are helping to get our shared lives or PA. So that's important to know, to keep going and give out these right information to people, then they know what they're after. And give them time to learn the words, because it's the right saying things like, oh, there's this social work advocacy, or there's this and that. It's new words. Give people time to understand them, and then they'll trust you. So that's also important to know. So thank you all for listening. Are there any questions?
That's great, Rachel. Thank you so much. Loads of people are thoroughly enjoying the images that you've created. There was one question actually about which character, if you could pick, would kind of most resemble you. Who do you most connect with?
It would be between Aladdin and Paul Scholes, to be honest. It'd be between those two.
Yeah, and why is that?
Aladdin is phenomenal at getting advice, and he never gives up. You know, Princess Jasmine says it's dangerous and Jafar's powerful. He still doesn't give up, does Aladdin? He'll just keep going no matter how hard it is till things change or things get back to normal for him and his friends. And for Paul Scholes, he just gets on with the job. He takes no notice what other people say. I remember when he once said, I always come and tackles very late. Everybody does. And I'm not really fussed what other managers think. My manager is happy with me. And that's all that matters. So long as my family and my managers are happy, not really interested what other people think. So that's really good to have people like that. Just focus on people that you work for, your family and friends, and just ignore what other people say.
Wise words indeed. Okay, so we've got a question for everyone. What do you think is the best way of promoting shared lives?
We said, haven't we, Andy, in the past, and James, about trying to get the word out, haven't we? We've been trying to work on for such a long time, haven't we? Try and get word out and get people involved, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. It is still a little known model of care. The best people that I find to get the word out are people like Rachel and James, because when they speak, people really do listen, and they have real life stories to tell. Shared lives is what we would like shared lives to be is an option, a promoted option for people. It's not going to fit everybody, but we feel that everybody should have a chance to that's right. So that option is out there, promoting it through the social work teams, etc., etc. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. And James says quite rightly to use language that people can understand. So yeah, that answers the question short. Unfortunately, we do come across social work teams around the country that you mentioned shared lives, and it's a blank look.
Yeah, try to do that. Oh, somebody making a noise there. Try to speak, somebody making a noise sign. Yeah, just to add a little bit to that is we need to also work around the social care system, because a lot of people have not been fitted the criteria in shared lives, and it's important that the people, like I said before, if you fight for your rights, you can get the right support. So it's important. That's something we may need to look into as well, because a lot of social workers I've never heard of shared lives. So it's make sure that the councils and new social workers are aware, and also for the individuals, like I said about fighting for your rights, it's important that people know that they're entitled to shared lives or whatever support they want, that they're entitled to it. So that's something maybe we need to look into.
And I think something that advocates can have a huge role.
Exactly.
Yeah, as you know, kind of give us a whoop whoop if you're on the call and you're thinking of people that you have supported in the past or currently supporting, where shared lives wasn't an option, and actually it could have been. And perhaps now that you know about shared lives, that this could be something that you are asking questions about. Okay, a couple more questions have come through. Sorry, James, did you have anything to add there?
And maybe words that you know what they mean,
But you don't.
and I don't know.
Okay, so like helping to understand what's going on, and
Yeah.
Got you. And you have linked beautifully into the next question, so thank you. Which is how can advocates best support people in shared lives?
Kind of like working in partnerships, really, I think. So if advocacies can work as a partnership with shared lives, or Shares Plus, shall I say, that would possibly help, I think, because if advocacies are working with individuals, so let's say, for example, you was to work with me or with James, just for example, and then we were struggling to use shared lives, and then you said to us, well, you can use shared lives. Oh, can we? Yeah. How do we do it? Well, we'll do this, and you're entitled to it, and everything. We'll look into the Care Act. Do you know what I mean? There's possibly a way that Advocacy can do it to try and help the individuals, and then plus work alongside shared lives plus. So there'll be a way to do it somehow.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm right with Gail on the power of partnership. That is crucial. And one of the things about shared lives, I think, is it is about partnership. That's the essence of shared lives, sharing shared lives, and it's a two-way process. It's not a one-way process. As I said you might have heard in the film, you might not, that I've got a huge. James has given me a huge amount of stuff in my life. He's changed my life, there's no doubt. And I wouldn't be doing half the things that I'm doing now if it wasn't for meeting up with James or being in shared lives. But yeah, advocacy is really important for us. I came across in my younger shared lives time that a social work organisation supposedly supporting adults with a learning disability and finding employment actually didn't really help at all. In fact, did a lot of damage. We had to try and do that, but at that time I needed support to make sure that that for James that he got what he needed, which is quite an interesting point.
Do you want to say something?
And shared life help make my health a lot better now. And so I can get out a lot more to do things myself.
I mean, as a shared life care for James and around epilepsy in this situation, I've advocated a lot with actually health professionals and guided against knee-jerk reactions in general hospitals around James's treatment. I'm obviously not a doctor, but I'm well trained in that, and more than anything else, I know James better than anybody else does in the world. And that's something that that shared lives can give you as well. Really important.
Yeah, that's a good thinking, that, Andy, because what's important with that is that people need to understand is the people that know the individuals well, like Andy said, it's important that they're involved in their people's lives. So if it's going to be involved trying to get people into shared lives, then whoever they network with, whether it's a creative support, a mentor, leaving care worker, whoever you can think of that they're involved at the time, or the parents, then what's important is that they play a key role because they know that person well, like Andy just said there, and then it's more about that person then, rather than having somebody having a key part that doesn't know the individual.
And I imagine there's been lots of times where, Andy, you've been James's advocate, and
absolutely,
yeah, that's kind of part of where I think advocates need to offer you support as well as James. Yeah. Okay, I've got a specific question around, and I don't know whether you'll know the answer to this, or hey ho, we'll ask. Do you know if the local authority housing teams can suggest shared lives, or is it just social services?
Hey, can you say that again? I didn't quite catch.
Yeah. So can local authority housing teams suggest shared lives, or is it just social services?
I'd like to think that they would be working together, and so there could be a conversation that's put forward. For example, there's one area that I know where shared lives is offered as the first option, and if it's not been offered as the first option, then it goes back to shared lives to make sure that they're top of the list. It may not work, obviously, it may not be appropriate, but it is offered as the first option. So although I don't know housing, I think people should talk, and there should be a partnership.
Yeah. There was a follow-up question about how would you know if someone is suitable for shared lives?
That's a very difficult one, that one, because, for instance, I just one got recently this year to try and get daycare support for shared lives, and unfortunately, there was no carers about, to be honest, for daycare support. So it's very tricky. It just depends. I know it's a different question you're asking there, but it can depend if they fit the criteria, which is a lot of discussion we've had for the last few years. And two, if there's any carers about. Because there's no carers, and obviously it's not going to work.
Yeah. Thank you. Any thoughts on? There's been a couple of questions about how shared lives is regulated, and I think a couple of experiences of people today on the session hasn't been that positive, and they've been concerned about shared lives carers. Just any thoughts or experiences on that side? Kind of what should people do, perhaps, if they're concerned?
Shared lives, it occurs in terms of CQC. CQC regulate the scheme, so it's the scheme that is regulated, rather than the carers, which is quite an important point. Obviously, if the scheme is doing a great job and supporting their carers, then that comes through. As I previously mentioned, COVID-19 has thrown up in huge questions for shared lives carers, in terms of financial constraints, of day services closing down, of shared lives carers spending 24/7, their house bills go up. Many schemes and councils, commissioners have given shared lives carers uplifts in terms of supporting them financially. Others haven't, or have been very, very slow to do it, and that's been a real bone of contention, as you would think, for carers. If carers don't think they're getting a great deal from this scheme, or have got real problems they can't sort out, I have to say they could come and talk to a Shared Lives champion, and they can do that via as a member of Shared Lives Plus. They can phone in, and then we pick up the calls and call them and take it from there. All our Shared Lives champions are Shared Lives carers, so we have an empathy and understanding of how it works, and sometimes it's really difficult. So that's a very sort of shortish answer to that.
Thank you. Anything to add, James?
No.
Okay.
Kate, I've just seen a question there from Anne. How do you ensure independence if it is needed?
Okay.
I can answer that question for you, Anne. In terms of when I use shared lives, for example, I lived with shared lives carer in September 2011, same week when United beat Leeds United. Sorry about United again. And I wanted to try and become independent, so the carer helped me massively to learn about bills, etc. And then May 2012, I lived in supported living, but still had daycare support. So and like James, as you can see, he still lives with Andy. So both have gone on different routes, if you would. So either you can stay with shared lives carer until, for example, till they retire, just for example, or you can just do what I've been doing, where the carers help you become independent as much as possible, and then you can try and live independently and still have daycare support. Obviously, like, things may change, as Andy's just said about the daycare support, but people have had different ways of becoming independent, to be honest. So I hope that's answered your question, that people just decide on how they want to do it, and it depends on their needs as well.
I think it's a really good question, Anne, a really good question. And in my situation with James, understandably, James being in a residential care virtually all his life, had things done for him. And when he came to Shared Lives, he understandably, there's no criticism of James, he expected everything to be done for him again. Why wouldn't he? He just waited for the next thing to come along, and now it's changed, isn't it, James?
Yeah.
So independence is, but that's the power of a carer, of carers, and people really getting to know the people they're working with, and supporting and embracing in a family situation, because you do know all the ins and outs of get to know people, and unfortunately for James, he gets to know quite a lot about me. I've tried to get him to like football for nearly 10 years, but it hasn't worked. But it's a really good question. And I think that following on from that, I think Shared Lives is much risk. It's not risk-led management. We can go and visit places and do things without filling out how endless forms. And James is really just, in our family, James is just another member of the family. Treat him just like I would anybody else, a brother. And I think that's a real strength of Shared Lives.
Yeah, it's like a family, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing that we haven't touched on is about Shared Lives. It's like consistency. That's another reason why it does work, to be honest. Because, like, as you can see, James is with Andy. He hasn't got 3 different carers living with him. When I've had the carer till May 2012, they had daycare support. I've had consistency with them. It's not like in support agencies, you get different people all the time. You don't know who's going to turn up and what time. So with Shared Lives Care, it's all about communication. There's the match-up process, as we touched on, and then there's consistency. So that's why also it works a lot better, as Andy said about, me and Andy just said there about the family.
Got you. Thank you so much. Yeah, wow, what ambassadors and spokespeople for Shared Lives. It's just incredible listening to everyone today, and I know that people in the chat box have really valued everything that they've heard. Just a really quick one, because I can see Catherine's asked about if dolls apply. Yes, Catherine, if the other criteria is kind of met, then the short answer is yes, the community dolls do. But yeah, right, I'm gonna say a huge thanks, because that was just incredible, and I think advocates will now be promoting Shared Lives. And please, advocates, make links with your local Shared Lives. Would you call it a provider or a franchise? What's the correct term?
I'm not too keen on the word franchise, but yeah, provider's okay.
Provider. So find out who your Shared Lives provider is. Of course, everybody living in Shared Lives might want advocacy, so that's a brilliant route in to promote your service. And in our next session, we've got Leah, who is going to be talking to us about self-advocacy, and she's a really successful activist around learning disabilities and Down syndrome, and uses art as a way to self-advocate. So do encourage you to come to the next session at 2. But I think we should give the final word to our Shared Lives ambassadors, if there's anything you'd like to finish on.
Just that I hope this session has helped everybody to learn more about Shared Lives, and to learn, I hope that you've learned as well a bit more about the advocacy bit, about fighting for your rights and everything through Care Act and human rights. So I do hope, as well as Shared Lives, I do hope the advocacy bits helped you as well.
And I think it's helped a lot of things with my health and other things, and so I can get out more.
Good, he says all the right things. Yeah, I mean, do get in contact. You can follow me on Twitter. You can contact Shared Lives Plus website. You can get in touch with us, and we'd be happy to continue this. But yeah, just wave a big flag that says Shared Lives, and would be great.
Great. Thanks again.
Cheers.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Right.
Bye.